doesn't go in their favor, they should be passing the ball a lot, unless they get a bunch of dump-offs, which Gardner Minshew seems to have found his guy in Brock Bowers. This is just not going to be a big game for the likes of the Raiders running backs. Along the same lines, I'm not starting any of the Browns running backs, be that Nick Chubb or be that Jerome Ford, right? Nick Chubb had his most efficient game, 4.5 yards per carry last week against the Saints. The game script, again, just doesn't help. And when they get away from the game script, when the Browns fall behind, it's the Jameis Winston show. And I feel like that's going to happen again against the Steelers. If the Browns are able to stay in this game, keep it close, this could be a big game for Nick Chubb. I just don't think the script's going to favor them at all. And Chuba Hubbard, going up against what I think is the best run defense in all of football. He's had a really good couple of weeks. He's been over all of his fantasy production points that you expect, and he's a guy that's hard to keep out of lineups. But if you have a better option than Chuba Hubbard, he's a guy that I'm not touching with a 10-foot pole this week against the Chiefs. Not only, again, that game script is not going to help him. The Panthers are not going to be in this game, but also that Chiefs run defense especially is one of the best in all of football, and you don't see much production from running backs going up against the Chiefs anyway. So I'm sitting Chuba Hubbard here. As far as the starting side of things, I'm starting James Conner. He's a guy that I think should be a lock in just about any fantasy lineup, but sometimes you go by matchups against the Seahawks. He should eat against the Seahawks, if I'm being completely honest with you. James Conner, he is going to run wild on them. The Seahawks defense is up and down, but they've been generally pretty bad against the run. James Conner should have a huge day against the Seattle Seahawks. Same thing with the Chiefs running backs. I'm starting whichever one is healthy. I'm starting Kareem Hunt regardless. They're playing the worst run defense in all of football right now in the Carolina Panthers. I am starting whoever is healthy. If it's Isaiah Pacheco, I'm starting Pacheco. Honestly, I'm starting both of them if that's possible. I'm not sure how the split's going to go. I'm starting Kareem Hunt in 100% of leagues if Isaiah Pacheco is not able to go. In the case that he is, I'm a little less gung-ho on it, but I still would start both of them. And at number 1, Tyrone Tracy against a Bucs defense that is honestly been pretty bad against running backs. You saw Kareem Hunt have a big day against them. You've seen basically all the running backs, especially receiving backs, have huge days against him. And Tyrone Tracy, reports are, now with Tommy DeVito in at quarterback, that he's going to be a lot more involved in the passing game. A former receiver at Iowa before he transferred to Purdue and became a running back. This is a guy with great hands out of the backfield. He should have a huge day against a bad Buccaneers defense. Turning to the receivers, it's a little bit more... There's a lot more receiver options out there, right? Starting with the sits, I'm sitting Calvin Ridley. He doesn't have that bad of a matchup, if I'm being honest with you. I just don't trust the Titans and Will Levis to get him the ball consistently. He's had one good game with Will Levis all season long. Every other time he's suited up with Will Levis, it just has not gone that well for him. DJ Moore, another guy I'm sitting again against a Vikings defense. I just don't trust that Bears offensive line is going to be able to hold up long enough, and the targets have been going a lot more towards rookie receiver Rome Odunze. 10 targets in back-to-back games for Rome Odunze. He's a guy that I think Caleb Williams is feeling more inclined to go to than a guy like DJ Moore at this point in his young career. Something that should be fixed, because DJ Moore is a very, very good receiver, and he's going to be very important if the Bears want to win this game, but I'm sitting him. And then number 1, I'm sitting Michael Pittman. He just doesn't have that same connection with Anthony Richardson. He didn't have it with that he had with Joe, not with Joe Flacco. He didn't have it with Joe Flacco either. I'm looking for a guy in Michael Pittman that just has not shown up all season, and I'm not starting him anymore until he shows me something. On the other side of the coin, a guy that had a bad week last week, I'm starting Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin maybe is a guy that you've locked into your starting lineups anyway. He's kind of on the fringe there for wide receivers of if you're an auto start or not. He's an auto start for me right now, and that doesn't change, especially against a very weak Cowboys defense. He should feast this week. Marvin Harrison, the rookie. Again, I'm really big on that Cardinals offense this week. I don't really trust that defensive performance from the Seahawks last week. I think this is going to be a huge game for Marvin Harrison. I'm starting him in all my leagues. And number one, Lad McConkey. He's getting more and more targets, more and more involvement in that offense. And again, a very bad secondary for the Baltimore Ravens on Monday Night Football. 6 for 126 last week on 9 targets. This is a guy that's only getting more involved with the offense. It's becoming a more passing-heavy offense, and he's going to have a big day. And last but not least, we have our tight ends. Tight ends that I'm absolutely staying away from. Dalton Schultz. He had his opportunity to do a lot more, like he was doing last season with Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs out. He didn't really have that much production. Now that Nico Collins is back, most of that is going to be, sapped up, and he's not a guy that I'm looking at to start in any lineups. Again, by matchup, Cole Kmet, another guy, there's just too many mouths to feed in Chicago, and I don't trust them against that Minnesota defense. Pat Freiermuth tonight. Russell Wilson just has not looked his way at all. He has his 2 jump ball receivers. Pat Freiermuth has not been very involved in the offense, and while I think this is a good matchup, I just don't know if he's going to get any targets just out of thin air. He hasn't been getting it at all. Getting on to our starters, a couple guys that went off last week and someone on a bye. Jonnu Smith is a guy that is getting more and more involved in that Dolphins offense. When you think of the Dolphins offense, you think of Tyreek Hill, you think of Jalen Waddle, but Jonnu Smith has quietly been the most productive receiver for them all season long. Even without Tua, he was a guy that was getting the ball, getting plays, getting yards. Jonnu Smith is a guy that I'm starting in every format. Will Dissly come on as a huge target sink for the Chargers. I know I just talked about Lad McConkey getting more targets, but Will Dissly, he continues to get huge amounts of targets every single time they go out there. He's finding a way to be open for Justin Herbert, and he's a guy that I love in just about every league. And finally, Cade Otton, my favorite tight end this week. You talk about a team that is getting Mike Evans back. That's definitely going to help. But Cade Otton's still acting as that wide receiver 2 right now in that offense. When all the wide receivers went down, he was the de facto wide receiver 1. That's the way he was going. He was getting 10, 13, 16 targets a